the second. Well, let's do one more regular with a cosine. Because I feel like we've graphed several sine functions. Let's graph a cosine function. What is the amplitude? 1/2. 1/2. Just the number before cosine or sine. What is the period? 2 pi. Why? There's no b. There's no number before the x. Okay? The next one I give you, we'll put a number there.
And then we multiply it.
And then what is the quarter period? I haven't changed anything, so it's still going to be that regular one that's on the graph. Okay? Let's graph. Okay? Don't graph it until you've given me all the points. Your y-axis should go up to what and down to what? What is your amplitude? How much are you going up? How much are you going down? 1/2. Now, granted, your 1/2 and your 3 shouldn't be at the exact same point, but it doesn't really matter. You label them. So we're going up to 1/2, we're going down to -1/2. Okay? That's your amplitude is going to go with the y-axis. Wait, period. Let's go ahead and lay out our x values, our key points, and we're going to start here. Okay, after 0. After 0, start at your quarter period. Yeah.
You multiply 1
Yeah. What's 1 times anything? Itself. Alright, so 0. We're going to add pi over 2. We're starting at our quarter period, so that should not change. Pi over 2 plus pi over 2. Simply pi. Pi plus pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. Plus pi over 2 is 2 pi. I sometimes say this in my head. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2. A lot of times they just go up incrementally like that. Is that every time? Okay. A lot of times.
Wait, what was the red?
Then I say, so after 0, I want you to start your x values.
Oh.
Start x's.
Those started in quarter.
At the quarter period. And then maybe I say you add the quarter period every time. Start your x's here. Then add quarter period to each one. Okay? That's how we get our x values. So then you have to think. Cosine of 0 is what?
1.
It's 1. It starts up. Cosine 0 is actually 1, the x value.
I don't understand that because it's x over r, or x over r.
Okay?
So it should be on the x-axis.
Okay, we're going from a circle to laying it out flat. That I think is sometimes can be confusing. Okay? Here, our x value is 1. Our output is 1. That makes it, I don't know, help a little. Okay, so when we lay a circle out, it kind of does get a little bit weird going from there. Going from the circle to the graph. But cosine of 0 degrees is 1. 1 times 1/2 is 1/2 times 1. Anything times 1 is just itself, is 1/2.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's why we start up.
Then you're right.
Then cosine of 90 degrees, or cosine pi over 2. We're at 0. 0 times 1/2 doesn't change anything. cosine of pi or cosine of
Wait, why are you
180.
doing zero?
Say what?
Why are you doing zero?
Why am I? Because cosine 90, right here, what is the y value? Sorry, what is the x value? 0. So that's on my output
Okay,
here.
it goes back up.
No, it doesn't.
How is it not there?
At 180,
Okay.
at 180, our x value is negative 1. Negative 1 times a half becomes negative 1/2. Okay. Cosine down here at 320. 270. Whew. At 270, what's our x value? We're back to 0. 0 times a half is 0. Cosine back over here, we're back to 1. 1 times a half is a half.
So you don't instead of 2
Okay, if my calculator's in radian mode, I can plug in 2 pi. Yes.
Oh,
What
you
is
can use
cosine?
calculator?
Ultimately, I would love if the things that you need to memorize are the directions. Cosine starts up
Right.
and it goes 0 down, back up there.
It'll always do that.
Always do that.
Oh, okay. I thought this is like so.
No,
You're gonna trick us at some point.
not gonna trick you. Cosine will always start up, then go to 0, then go down, back up. Ugh, unless we put that negative sign out there,
Yeah, then
and then it'll flip down.
So cosine can start.
If it's a negative out there. Yes.
Okay, so pretty much all we do is we take the pattern that's supposed to be, then we take the amplitude,
Yep.
and we plug that into the circle, going around it. Right?
Yes. Ultimately, I don't want you to have to draw this circle.
I'm not gonna draw a circle, but we go around the circle.
Yes.
And we plug it in. So 0, 1, 0, negative 1. No,
Yep.
0, negative 1, 0.
For cosine, yes.
Alright.
1, 0, negative 1, 0, back to 1.
Okay, well, you do cosine.
Sine 0, 1, negative 1, 0. Sorry. 0, 1, 0, negative 1, back to 0.
0, 1.
Okay, it's all on the posters in the back. Those graphs will not change. Sine will all. The issue is knowing where do they start. Sine always starts at 0. Cosine always starts at 1. And then that number is multiplied by what's here, by your amplitude, by what number's in front.
Oh, I get it.
Okay, so can I now add a b? So I'm going to write out an equation. Y equals a sine bx. This is your general generic equation. Okay, I'm going to write this out a lot as we add. A is the amplitude. Absolute value of A is the amplitude. The B, yes, the B will change our period. We'll change the period. So the period will be 2 pi over whatever B is. Okay? Okay? All right. So when I add and write an equation, y equals, and I'm going to leave an a out right now because we don't need to handle anything else, sine 2x. I put in a b. Okay, that's what it will look like. So I'm going to ask the same questions. What is the amplitude? 1.
Oh.
What is the period? So I'm going to say 2 pi over b. What's 2 pi divided by 2? Pi. So this time, instead of going all the way to 2 pi, we're only going to go to pi.
Ooh, but you still have to do quarters, right?
Do I still have to do the quarters? This is when the quarter period becomes So
Very,
that is
very,
very important. Pi is where it will end.
Okay,
Definitely.
question.
Okay.
Are we gonna have our plate when we do all this?
Yeah.
Okay, can I see yours? Mine is missing actually.
I gave you yours back. Okay, so what is our quarter period?
Pi over 4.
Pi, your period, divided by 4.
What? Is that what you always will do?
You're going to take a quarter of whatever your period is.
So you could do. Okay. You would just do pi times 1 over 4, and then
You're multiplying it times 1/4. Yeah. So when I go to graph this, I don't know why I always start with a y-axis. What am I going up to? What am I going down to? We're going up to 1, we're going down to -1. Because that is my amplitude. We start at 0. That's where we're going to start.
Wow.
So many things I see coming in your future. Then, where are we going from 0? What are we adding? The
To
quarter
pi
period.
over
The
4.
quarter period. So we're going to quarter period, which is pi over 4. And I'm going to take my quarter period, and how do I find the next point?
Add it.
I'm going to add it, the quarter period, to that point. What is pi over 4 plus pi over 4?
Pi over 2.
Pi over 2. I'm going to go ahead and write 2 pi over 4. We're going to reduce that to pi over 2. Then we'll take that number, this is my next point, and add another quarter period. What's 2 pi over 4 plus pi over 4? 3 pi over 4.
Okay, wait.
Okay, wait, just a second. 3 pi over 4. Do we have enough points? We need one more. Plus pi over 4. What's 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 4? 4 pi over 4, which is simply pi. We should end
With the period.
at the period.
So I put that down first.
That's fine. I had somebody say, well, I just take the period, divide it in half, then divide it in half, and then add that back to it. I'm like, whatever. It works.
Okay. So here.
Here. So if I cut this in half,
Yeah. So it was this was the quarter period and then that was next here.
so technically this is next.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is like the third last.
It won't always do that.
Okay.
I'm starting out nice. Okay, we still need to graph it. All we've done is label our axes. We've labeled the y, we've labeled the x. Then I go back to my equation and say, what type of graph do I have?
Sign.
We have sign, and it's a positive sign, so I'm starting at 0. I don't want to do red. Too blue. Sign graphs. At this point, I stop asking what everything is. At your first x value, you're going up to 1. Your next x value, you're going back to 0. The next x value, you're going down to -1, and then back up to 0. Because your book chooses to do something that I greatly dislike. I think it's way more confusing, and I think you can get it by just knowing the pattern of the way sign goes. If sign starts at 0, you're going to 1 to -1, back to 0 to -1, back to 0. It's the pattern. That shape will not change. Okay? That's why you go ask yourself, it's a sine curve and it's positive, so I go up first. Don't think about anything else. Just sketch it. Okay? Do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
Yes.
3.5.
Oh, we've got so y equals, and this time I'm going to give you
Do both.
2 cosine 4x. I've given you multiple things. I want you to answer the questions. start abbreviating quarter period, QTR, PER. Do you believe me now? I'm going to say period 52 times in the next week and a half. I know.
Okay.
What is the amplitude?
1, 2.
2. What is the period? I like to go ahead and say 2 pi over 4 and then reduce. It's okay if you put this there. So when you reduce, we're going to pi over 2. How do we?
Bless you. I just
Times 1
multiply.
over
Bless
4.
you.
Quarter period is always 1/4 of the period. Hint, hint, why we needed to divide fractions by hand. Because I need you to know how to divide pi over 2 divided by 4 over 1. So we flip, we multiply times 1/4. So is my quarter period pi over 8?
Yes.
Yes. A little hint, the bigger these numbers get with x, the smaller our period gets. If we had a fraction, it would get much longer. We'll do those later. So can we graph what are we going up to? What are we going down to? 2 and -2. Our x values, where are we starting? After 0, where are we starting?
Oh, hybrid.
Pi over 8. Do we need to go and add? Pi over 8 plus pi over 8 equals 2 pi over 8, which is pi over 4. Pi over 4 plus pi over 8. Do you see what I do over here on my little scratch? I don't reduce over here, because then I don't have to go back and get common denominators again. So 2 pi over 8 plus pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, plus pi over 8 equals 4 pi over 8, which is pi over 2, which is our period. We've ended at the right spot. Now, what type of graph is this? Cosine, and it is positive. Positive cosine graphs start up, and then you just go hit each point. Cosine graphs won't change.
I know.
All right. You want to do more graphing tomorrow? Are you okay?
Oh my god, I just jammed my foot.